Good plan to get revenge for cheating. I looked forward to the first day of deer hunting season like I looked forward to Christmas as a kid. It always falls on the first Monday after Thanksgiving in Pennsylvania and is something of a state holiday. Many schools close because a large number of students from the lower grades and many teachers will be out in the woods of Penn on Monday instead of in the classroom. At the last minute, a client from California insisted that I be available on Monday to check on his account. I tried to talk him out of it and even gently probed him about meeting with another company representative. The account meant a lot to the company, which in turn made it very important to me as well. For the first time since I turned 12, I spent the first day of deer season at work. I resigned myself to the fact that I wouldn't have to leave for our hunting camp until Monday night, thus missing out on all the fun we hunters had enjoyed the day before the hunt. This meant I would be behind in beer consumption and poker money lost. With any luck, I would be able to make up most of the lost time, beer and money on Monday night. To that end, I packed my hunting gear into my pickup truck, threw a case of beer in the back seat, and made the 3-hour drive to our hunting camp in Bradford County. My wife, Barb, left me a note letting me know she was going out with a couple of her girlfriends and wishing me luck on the hunt. I wasn't fooled. I knew most wives were more than happy to see us guys away from home the first week of deer season. It was a little vacation for them. I was about an hour from home when dusk turned to darkness. As I followed the twists and turns and curves of Route 6, I saw the service van in front of me chisel a beautiful deer and throw it off to the side of the road. As I slowed down, I saw another deer, a female, fly off the van and fall next to the male. I pulled over to the side of the road and, shining my headlights on my pickup truck, looked at the unfortunate animals. The deer had beautiful antlers nearly 2 feet apart. The females were considerably smaller. Both were as dead as last year's dandelions. I immediately made a decision. I pulled tags out of my hunting jacket, filled them out, and hung them on the deer. Then I loaded them into my truck, turned around, and headed home. I had to get them somewhere I could butcher them before their bodies got too cold. The longer I waited, the more difficult and damaging the process became. I stopped at a buddy's old barn about 2 miles away and turned on the outside light. Then, with a field lantern, I illuminated both deer. As I worked on the male, I admired his antlers. He was the cutest deer I had ever seen. It occurred to me that I had a great opportunity to win a large deer shooting pool at my hunting club. I debated the moral issue that could arise from the fact that this was actually a prey from a traffic accident and not a prey from a hunt. I quickly dismissed any doubts that crept into my mind. The rule of thumb is the biggest antlers on a legally tagged deer. I qualified. Besides, I had never been close to winning a hunting competition before. This was my time. I decided to head home to clean up and change my clothes. No matter how many times I had butchered deer, I couldn't do it without getting blood on my shirt and jeans. I threw the butchered animals into the truck and headed home. My tags were filled, and I suddenly had no reason to rush back to camp. By the time I got there, it would be too late to drink beer or play cards. At least I have my animal tags properly secured, I thought as I turned onto the dead-end road that led to my house. I had already seen a friend of mine fined heavily for having a tag fall off his deer. The local county judge refused to admit that the deer was properly tagged and that it was fate that intervened to rip the tag off the animal. The judge's name was Ray Parker, and he was proud to be known in our town as the hanging judge. He only handled small law cases and lawsuits under $10,000. But he was a pompous donkey. Barb was on friendly terms with the asshole's sister. Still, I knew it wouldn't do me any good to get in front of this asshole in court for illegal hunting charges or traffic violations. It was well past 11 when I pressed the remote to open my garage door. The house was completely dark, so I assumed Barb was already in bed and probably asleep. I was surprised to see that I couldn't pull into my garage. In my spot was a brand new Lincoln. Barb's Jeep was in its usual spot. As I walked around the Lincoln, I felt the hood and it was cool. The car must have been there for some time. The keys were in the ignition. I walked quietly into my house. I stopped and listened. The house was dark and very quiet. A little nervous, I walked up the stairs that led to the bedroom. As I approached the master bedroom, I heard loud snoring. I had slept with Barb for 25 years, and she never snored. My insides clenched. I walked through the open door into the bedroom. The moonlight was enough to make out two human figures on my bed. And then I wondered why the hell I was sneaking around my damn house. I reached out, turned on the light, and waited for the damn storm to follow. No one even flinched. Barb was sleeping naked with her arm around a man. The man had a round beer belly and lots of belly and chest hair. I leaned over and yanked the pillow off his face. It was the fucking hanging judge himself. Ray Parker was asleep in my bed with my wife's left breast in his soft little hand. It's funny what goes through a man's mind at times like that. I found myself most outraged that my wife had invited such a pathetic asshole into her bed. Hell, she and I both knew a bunch of guys who from time to time could get a piece of her ass. And that would have been preferable. Then I saw the empty wine bottles on the nightstand. No wonder turning on the bedroom light didn't bother them at all. They must have been drunk to a stupor. I went downstairs to get my deer hunting rifle. Next time that bastard wakes up, he'll be dead. Digging around in the truck for a rifle and ammo, I began to contemplate my situation. The husband is always the prime suspect. Heck, even if someone else shot the asshole, I'd probably still be convicted of murder simply because I had such a strong motive. I should have been smarter than that. Then I noticed the horns sticking out over the side of my truck. I was damn sure I didn't want to go to jail before I showed the other guys my deer and won the contest. Parker wasn't worth missing out on this once-in-a-lifetime pleasure. Anyway, Barb and I haven't been getting along very well lately. Why let that idiot ruin my life? I quickly devised a plan B and put it into action. I took my deer hunting tag off the deer that was in my truck and carefully placed it in the big trunk of the Lincoln. Then I pulled out an old 12-gauge double-barreled shotgun that I had bought from an old drunk a few weeks before he died, almost 20 years ago. I never told anyone I had it. It was an extremely deadly and illegal weapon. I wiped it down with an old rag so it wouldn't leave fingerprints and put it in the trunk, next to the deer stalker. I even found a relatively new pillow and threw it in the trunk, first ripping off the damn tag that warned that it was a federal offense to remove the fucking thing. Then I went into the house and filled the kettle with very hot tap water. I filled a cooking spritz with it and went back to the deer in the trunk of the Lincoln. I poured some hot water into the gutted cavity and waited about a minute. Then I used the syringe to suck a fair amount of bloody water out of the corpse and poured it into a bowl. Then I filled the syringe from the deer's body again and parked my truck around the corner of the house. I pulled out my son's hockey goalie mask, put it on, and went back to my rather noisy bedroom. With Barb drinking, it was almost impossible to wake her up. My plan would work better if she continued to sleep, but I was ready to flap my wings if the need arose. I took Parker's clothes off the chair in the bedroom and stashed them in the closet. I noticed his cell phone was still hanging on his belt. I then placed the bowl and syringe on the nightstand. I climbed onto the bed, placing my knees on either side of Barb. Reaching that position, I pushed Parker slightly, but he continued to snore. I pulled the deer heart out of the baggie I'd put it in when I carved it. Sometimes the guys at camp like to marinate them with beer and crackers. I've never had a taste for that particular organ. I opened the leather latch holding my hunting knife and exposed the blade. Then I poured the blood from the bowl onto the sheets and onto Barb's chest. It's amazing how little blood it takes to make it look like a crime scene. Barb reached out and lightly rubbed her left breast while the liquid quickly dried. Then she lowered her hand again. I emptied the bowl, set it back on the table, and picked up a syringe from the table. I held it over Parker's face and lowered it down, about 4 inches above his snoring mouth. Holding the heart in one hand, I squeezed it very hard and squirted bloody water on Parker, some of which went into his mouth and caused him to choke. I quickly put the syringe down, picked up the knife, and began to drive the point over the heart in my left hand. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Parker and giggled like the Wicked Witch of the North. He hissed and suddenly straightened up sharply. He looked at the heart in my hand and then at Barb's bloody chest, coughed and spit out the blood he'd swallowed. He sighed convulsively. Then I turned my masked face to look at him. That was enough. He jumped out of bed and rushed down the hallway like a rocket, and all I had to do was get to the garage as he was opening his car door, completely naked. "You're next!" I shouted as he slammed the door shut and sprinted out of the garage. I went back upstairs and put Parker's clothes back on the chair, took his cell phone from him and slipped it into his pocket, took the time to pull Barb's cell phone out of its notebook case and slipped it into my pocket too. Then I took the bowl and syringe and put them in the sink with the rest of the dirty dishes. I turned on the dishwasher and went to my truck, first turning off all the lights and closing the garage door. I was only a few miles down the road when I noticed a large Lincoln standing on the side of the road. It occurred to me that there must be some truth to the old theory that a couple pounds of sugar in a car's gas tank can have disastrous consequences. Half a mile away from the car, I spotted what was obviously a naked man running down the highway. As I drove closer, he turned and ran toward the shore, out of sight. Well, what kind of sick, crazy bastard would run naked in late November in northern Pennsylvania? I saw my duty clearly. I grabbed Parker's cell phone, dialed 911, and reported the disturbing sight I had just witnessed. But I forgot to leave them my name. They would have to rely on the caller ID to determine exactly who made the call. Less than an hour later, I drove past the spot where I had seen the 2 deer killed. I picked up Parker's cell phone and dialed my home number. The call went to the answering machine the first time I called. I hung up and dialed my number again. This time, Barb picked up after the 4th ringtone. "Hello? Something's wrong," Barb asked with that usual preoccupation you get in the wee hours of the morning. "Turn on the light and see what's left of your lover," I hissed into the receiver. I waited about 10 seconds, and then I heard a primal growl. Barb must have seen the blood and found someone's heart next to her in bed. At least that was the only thing that could have upset her that much. "You crazy bastard!" Barb yelled into the phone. "You killed Ray. You'll never get away with this. I'm calling the police." The phone in my ear went silent. A smile flashed across my face as I thought of the story Barb was telling the police at this very moment. I pulled up to the hunting camp around 4 in the morning, hung my deer on a pole we had for that purpose. I noticed a couple of smaller deer already hanging there and grinned to myself as I entered the cabin. When I walked in, old Dan McGraw was already cooking breakfast. He had been picked to cook for the group. Then he could go hunting until the next meal. He put a plate of bacon, eggs, and potato pancakes in front of me, and I took up the meal. Tom Burton got out of bed and went outside to check the weather. He was gone for a minute or so, and then burst back through the door. "Where the hell did you get that deer, Dave?" he asked demandingly. "That's the biggest one I've ever seen." This question caused a mass migration out the front door. Few things give a hunter more hope than the sight of a beautiful deer taken by someone else. It renews their hope and fires their imagination. I explained how I had stopped by a friend's house at dusk the night before. I went out into the thickest thicket of brush and mountain laurel I could find and came upon a large male. Then, as he ran full speed through the dense thicket, I stalked him and shot him once. The rest was history. While the other guys pulled on warm clothes and put on their insulated boots, I stripped off my clothes, climbed into my bunk between the sheets, and fell sound asleep. A few hours later, something jolted me awake. I opened one eye. There was a head in a police cap in front of me. "Mr. Reed, I hate to interrupt your hunt, but I have a few questions for you," he said calmly, not trying to hide his sarcasm. I stared at him for a few seconds, then sat up and scratched all the places a man should scratch when he first wakes up. Then I pulled on my pants and shirt and headed for the coffee pot. "Now that's a nice deer with your tag," he began. "Where and when did you get it?" "On a friend's property." "The time is on the tag," I answered slowly. "Are state police officers on the hunting license commission right now?" "Let's cut to the chase, Mr. Reed. Your wife called the Springville police this morning. She said you killed her lover, who turned out to be County Judge Ray Parker. She said you cut out his heart and left it next to her on your bed." "And to make matters worse, Parker's car was found abandoned about a mile from your house. A search of the car turned up a dead deer and a sawed-off shotgun in the trunk. There was also a pillow with the federal tag removed, the cop added after thinking for a moment. Ray Parker's body has not yet been found. It's only a matter of time, Mr. Reed. Why don't you make it simple and tell us where you put Parker's body? The cop insisted. Wow, you guys are good, I grinned. Skip all that forensic investigation bullshit and just want to get some dumb asshole to confess to a murder when you have no body, no motive, no weapon. The cop picked up my hunting knife, which was in a plastic bag, and waved it in front of me, saying, "Jealousy is the oldest motive. Not many men are very happy when they find out that their wife is a cheater. All we need is Parker's body, and we'll have everything we need to send you to prison for a long time." I'm more than a little disappointed in the way various law enforcement agencies are handling this situation. I grinned at the surprised cop. You draw the wrong conclusion and then try to prove that it actually happened. Then you try to get a confession about something that didn't really happen, rather than finding out what really happened and following the clues to where they will lead. Last time I saw Ray Parker, he was running through the woods naked. I don't know why. Perhaps it was my ritual of thanking the hunting gods for giving me a magnificent trophy deer that made him mildly nauseous. That, and the fact that he saw me in the same room where he slept with my wife, could have triggered some kind of irrational, guilt-induced fear in him, which in turn caused him to run out of the room naked. I speculated. If Parker is still alive, why was there a heart in your bed? Like I said, I have a ritual I go through when I get the blessing to take a big deer. I kneel down in my bed and pick up the deer heart as a sign of gratitude. Then I place the heart on my bed as a sign of appreciation and respect to the gods of the hunt, I added, with all the reverence available to me. At that moment, the policeman's walkie-talkie rang. He went outside and spoke in a muffled voice for a few minutes. Then he went back inside. Ray Parker was found half an hour ago, wandering naked in the woods. 2 hunters found him and pointed him in the direction of the road. I think once they realized who it was, they refused to give him any clothes or just lead him out of the woods. They told him they were here to hunt, not pick up trash. The cop grinned. I thanked the officer when he gave me my knife back. He asked me to stop by the local police station and give a statement. I promised him I'd do it as soon as I finished my week-long hunt, and crawled back into my bunk. Friday afternoon, I stopped by the police department. They were a little pissed that I waited so long to make my statement. But that wasn't my problem. And it seems Ray Parker accused me of making him believe that I had cut Barb's heart out. He further claimed that I planted a deer and a shotgun in his trunk and even ruined his Lincoln. I have the right to practice worshiping the gods of hunting in my home, I told the police officer who questioned me. If he is not satisfied with my rituals, he really should stay out of my marital bed. That way he won't come into contact with them. As for the deer and illegal weapons, I have sat in the courtroom and heard him himself tell people when caught red-handed that anyone would lie to avoid accountability for their actions. It's time for this dumb shit to step up to the common plate and take his medicine like a man. I don't know anything about the deer, the gun, or his damn wrecked car. He's got hundreds of enemies. Didn't the cop tell me he also had a pillow with the tag removed? That's a federal offense. Check this out. Friday night, I was asleep in my bed at home. I felt the bed stir and woke up to find Barb sitting on the edge of the bed next to me. She hadn't been there when I went to bed. I suppose you know I called our kids and told them to lock the doors. I told them that you went berserk and killed my lover, and they should call the police if you showed up on their doorstep, Barb began. I'd heard something about it now that you mention it, I admitted quietly. You may have even heard rumors that I called the police and told them that you cut out Ray's heart and left it lying in our bed, Barb continued as I nodded in agreement. I guess you heard that Ray was charged with a firearms violation and fined for transporting an illegal deer and for hunting without a license, Barb continued. The ADA even tried to prosecute him for taking the tag off the pillow, but I think that's legal since the pillow has already been sold. No shit? I replied in surprise. You can take those tags off once you pay for the pillow? I suppose the same can be said for mattresses. I never knew that. It seems obvious, Dave. It was a new pillow and now it's covered in blood and some kind of filth, along with all the other linens and pillows that were on that bed. You didn't have to resort to that ruse. Ray has enough problems with the other cases he's being accused of. Knowing your character, I'm still surprised he didn't have crack and prescription pills in his trunk. I have no idea what you're talking about, Barb. That Parker is a cool dude. I never knew he was into illegal shit like that. It's not like I never realized he was sleeping with my wife. So how would I know what he's like? I replied. You're not going to be happy with that fool lying next to you for long, Dave, Barb complained. She's been married a couple times and can't keep her legs closed. She'll spread them for someone else the first time you turn around. Well, Barb, I've come to the conclusion that this is true for a great many women. The difference is I don't expect much from Doris. She's an idiot, but she's great in bed. Look at those tits, I exclaimed, pulling back the sheet that covered the sleeping woman. I told you a long time ago that if I ever caught you cheating, I'd be in your cousin's panties in a heartbeat. You were warned, so don't whine. It doesn't suit you, Barb. You really set me up, Dave, Barb confessed. Ray Parker was the only man I ever cheated on you with, and only a couple of times. By the time you get tired of Doris, we'll be even, won't we, Dave? Until then, I'll sleep in the guest room. I've been staying with Susan, but she, my only daughter, has made it clear to me that she thinks I'm a terrible mother. I shouldn't have called our kids and told them to lock the doors in front of you. They would never have known about my stupidity with Ray, Barb said thoughtfully. You never would have told them, would you, Dave? You always had a rule about never scolding me in front of our children. You made me do it on my own. I lost the respect of my husband and kids because of some pompous asshole. What are you going to do now, Dave? I'm going to wait until you leave the room, and then I'm going to wake up your cousin, and we're going to have a nice time together, I said with a grin.